Welcome to the All About Pigeons podcast, brought to you by the All About Pigeons nonprofit organization, which is dedicated to promoting education and promotion of the pigeon hobby. Every week, a listener requests to drive our conversations about all things pigeons. Join me, Philip Fry, as we learn and share stories about these incredible birds and this ancient hobby. Today, in this episode, we're going to be talking about the breed Classic Frill, and Ralph Lewis is going to be talking with us. Ralph Lewis is a lifelong pigeon breeder. He is currently the secretary and treasurer of the National Classic Frill Club. He has won Best of Breed and second reserve overall in the Top of Utah Pigeon Show in 2022, reserve champion at the Salt Lake Premier Show in 2022, as well as second reserve at the Salt Lake Premier Show in 2024. And today, it's all about Classic Frill. Ralph, thanks so much for coming on and talking with us.
I'm glad to be here.
So can you give us a background with pigeons in your own life?
Well, I've had pigeons off and on all my life, but I kind of fell in love with the Classic Frills 4 or 5 years ago when my neighbor had these Classic Frills, and I just fell in love with the beauty of this bird with its lacy wings, frill on its chest, and the little top knot on top of the head that is just really cute as far as I'm concerned. So that was my beginning, and he shared birds with me, and there were a couple of other guys in the immediate vicinity that were raising them as well. So we formed kind of a wonderful little nucleus of breeders in my area, and not only the birds, but the companionship has been wonderful.
Yeah, that's always nice when you have breeders all in one area. You guys can all work off of each other and see what works.
Yes, indeed.
So can you give us a little bit of history and background on this breed and maybe explain the difference between the Oriental frill and the Classic frill as well?
The origin of the Classic Frill is actually goes clear back to probably Turkey. It was originally described as being the pigeon of the sultans, and this goes back to the 1700s, more or less. So it was a breed that was bred for the sultans back in those days, and was not necessarily shared with the common people. It's actually still known as the bird of the sultans in Turkey. There was a recent report from our club affiliates in Germany. They had signs that were announcing it as the pigeon of the sultans.
That's a good tagline. I like that for the breed tagline.
Well, it's such a beautiful bird. I mean, rather than just being, kind of solid colors, those lacy wings to me are just an outstandingly attractive feature.
What do they call the different colors that they come in?
The Classic Frill has wings that are laced and have the variable colors on them, but the rest of the body, the feet, the neck, the head are all pure white. It's really pretty interesting. Oh, another interesting thing that comes along with that, some of the Classic Frills have what they call a spot tail. I don't know if many other birds have that, but they have spot tails or moon spots at the bottom of their tails. So the tail feathers are solid except for the last inch, and they have white spots that are surrounded with black on the bottom of the tail. And that was supposed to be a feature that was very important to the original breeders in Turkey, and something that they've wanted to continue to breed. It's an important feature in the standard of both the satinet and the blondinet Oriental frills or Classic Frills.
Can you explain the difference between satinet and blondinet?
Yes, they are pretty much the same as far as body size and what we're looking for as far as the lacing, feathers on the feet, the frill on the chest, the top knot, the peak at the top of the head. But the blondinet does not have any white. It's colored all the way, all the way through, across its body. Whereas the satinet, as I was talking about before, has only the lacing on the wing and the tail, and the rest of the body, the main body, the legs, the frill, and the head are all white. So the satinet has mostly white with the color on the wing and tail. The blondinette is fully colored all the way through, although they feature some very beautiful lacing and other beautiful features as well.
And what is this breed's temperament like? Are they a pretty docile, easy to handle bird, or they get kind of wily?
They're pretty mild. They don't necessarily like to be caught and handled, but you can walk into a pen and they'll just kind of flow around you and go back. You can catch them pretty easy when you need to check a band number or, when you're trying to put them together to mate, find out which ones are the boys and the girls and that sort of thing. But they're not an overly aggressive or a wild pigeon. In fact, I know of one of our club members who raised a baby up and kind of shocked everyone at the show. Maybe this is not totally unusual, but she walked through one of the shows with a classic frill on her shoulder, and this bird was definitely her companion throughout the show and made quite a stir.
That's one of the breeds that a lot of people who do pigeons as pets really are attracted to because they're just so beautiful. I mean, they have almost like parrot-like qualities to them.
They are beautiful. That's certainly why I'm attracted to them.
Can you describe your loft setup? Are you doing like an open loft setup, or do you have nesting boxes that you keep them in?
Yeah, mine would be more of a an open setup. What I have is what I call sun porches. So in other words, I have in one end of my loft, and I have different compartments. So if I'm describing one, I'm describing all of my loft areas. So I have nesting boxes for, two, three, four pair, something like that in one end. And then the other, I have just perch setups where they can set. And I guess I like to have the little bit larger area like that so they can fly back and forth. I've noticed some that I have tried to put into a breeding box situation. They will once in a while just sit there and flap their wings to try and get some exercise. So I think they're missing not having that open area to fly back and forth. And then on either a side or another end, I have what I call a sun porch, so they can get out and actually get right in the sun and sun themselves. And that's where I will put the bathing trays every week or so and allow them to take a bath.
Is that an open area or like an aviary?
Well, it's more or less an aviary, but it's just a wired knockout section, I guess, part of the loft itself. The sun porch would only be 2 feet deep, front to back, and 4 to 6 feet long, depending on which of my lofts there that happens to be in.
And it's all wired off.
Yeah, it's wired off. That sun porch has 1 inch hardware cloth on the bottom of it, so everything can drop through. There's a lot of air that comes through. The walls are made with 1/4 inch hardware cloth, and I have a 1 by 6 perch the length of the thing, so several birds can get up there and sun, or they can be down on the lower part and sun and be out in the fresh air and that sort of thing. And it kind of keeps the interior dust down too, so that the pigeon dust doesn't get oppressive in there.
What's the size of your nest boxes?
I followed an example of one of my friends. So each nest box is actually a two compartment nest that's roughly 30 inches across, a foot deep and a foot tall. Each pair has a perch that runs the 30-inch length of it, and then there's a divider between the two that comes out to that perch. So the birds can walk around to the other half of their nest box. So when they get babies up and where they're squeaking around and that sort of thing, they want to lay some more eggs, they can go into that second compartment to lay the next set of eggs. And often the babies will go over and help them sit on the eggs.
Oh, no kidding. Wow. They don't seem to abandon the other babies with that setup and pay more attention to the eggs.
Oh, I'm sure they do, but the babies, will squeak enough and they're just part of that. And I don't know. This breed is one that when they begin to fly and hit the floor, that's when you have to be a little bit careful. They leave the nest, they still can't really quite fly. So I always put a water container and a feed container right there on the floor. The older birds like to go down and feed at those places too, so it gives the younger birds the idea of how to feed and where to find feed and that sort of thing. Seems to work out pretty well for me.
How is this breed when it comes to breeding and rearing young? Do you have to use fosters because of the short beak, or do they do a pretty good job of that?
No, they do a pretty fair job. I guess as with all breeds, I've had some difficulties up till this point in my season because here in my area, we've had some cold flashes where it's gotten down below freezing. So even though I've had birds on eggs or young birds in a nest, unless I know about it in time and can put some heat in there, they don't make it through those cold snaps. But once it gets warmer like that, I'm sure it's the same as with all other breeds. Every once in a while, one of the two babies gets kind of excluded and they raise one and not the other. Often they'll raise two, sometimes they'll only raise one, or once in a while, one of the eggs is either infertile or just doesn't hatch for some reason. And
With them having a shorter beak, do you have to have any kind of special watering system to keep water from getting like in their face, or they find the way with the regular watering?
they're really not a short-faced breed. They have beaks that are long enough that they are able to feed their young. And I have never noticed any kind of problem with their getting into the drinking water. I use gallon milk jugs that I've cut a 3-inch square bottom hole out of two sides, and so there's I don't know, 2.5 inches of water in the bottom of that gallon jug. They seem to go to and use it pretty regularly with no problem.
So let's talk about prepping for a show. What are some of the steps that you take when it comes to prepping and conditioning this breed before showtime?
I have acquired some of the show cages, so I like to, use those show cages not only to select the ones that I'm going to take to the show, but to give them a chance to get used to being in the show cages and not be afraid of them. So I always even put, the feed and water out there so that they don't feel like they've been abandoned or whatever. I know some guys will actually play music or try to bring neighbors over to kind of just be more of a crowd, you might say, while they're in those breeding pens, so they get used to having noise and traffic pass by them and that sort of thing. So there's that aspect. Of course, you'll want to give them a bath 2 weeks in advance and then a week in advance to make sure that they're as clean as possible. And once in a while, a bird that still looks pretty good in other ways might have a stray feather or two, and everybody that I know will actually pull those feathers out a couple of weeks in advance and try to get them more in line with the standard of perfection for the breed in advance of the show.
What age do you start cage training them and putting them in those show cages?
Boy, I've never worried about age. I just pick out because I kind of specialize in only 2 to 3 colors. There are a lot of colors, browns, silvers, reds, blues. I specialize in black, lace, and bluettes, which are a solid bar or a solid wing, solid blue wing with a couple of white bars on the wing. Those are my 2 favorite colors, and those are the ones I go for. So when I'm getting ready for a show, I will pick out my couple of best young hens, young cocks, old hens, old cocks, and so it's more, what looks best and closest to the breed standard that I will then concentrate on keeping out in those show cages. And I only leave them out there for a day at a time. When I'm able to be out and about, I'm working with other things in the area. So I'd be passing by them and stop to say hello, tell them how pretty they are and that sort of thing as I pass by.
Can you talk a little bit about the breed standard and how the points are applied for it?
Well, the breed standard has different points depending on a number of criteria. Number one, I guess, on and for most of it is how they stand at station. So a bird that maybe has a few other flaws, if it stands the way it's supposed to, upright with eyes just about centered over the front of the feet, the wings should be straight back and just above the tail. The tail should not quite touch the ground, a few things like that. So if a bird is just sitting on its haunches in the cage and is very disinterested and so on, that's not what a show judge is looking for. Or looking for a bird that stands kind of at attention and kind of wants to show off. The feet should be covered, but it should not be excessively covered with white feathers. I guess personally, I like the look of those feathered feet. They're just kind of like short boots, and they're not like the long feathers of like a fantail or something like that with the really long feathers. These are just barely covering the toes. The frill on the chest needs to be centered and even both sides of center and maybe be about 2 inches long from top to bottom. The little frill on the top of the head should be visible from the front if you look at the bird straight on. Sometimes that frill drops a little bit too low in the back or that sort of thing. But those, I guess, things are less important than the way it stands and how close it comes to having the necessary things, the feathered feet, the frill on the chest, and the peak on the back of the head.
So you're breeding for specific colors. Is there anything towards the standard that's more difficult with this breed, like you're saying, like the stance, or is there something, is it with the colors? Is it with the stance? Is it with the frill that is really being worked on with this breed?
We normally, when we assess our birds and get ready for a show, we're looking at all aspects of the standard. And I tend to breed, once in a while, for example, in my bluettes, the ones with the solid blue wing with the white bars. Once in a while, those bars will have root beer color, or the bars won't be definite. They'll kind of wander all over the place. Those are birds that are less impressive than one of the birds that maybe would have the solid blue with those white bars being very distinct. The white bar should have a black line on the underneath part of it. So it's very, very well described. That bluette also has the spot tail feature. In other words, its tail feathers would be blue clear down to the last inch, and then each feather would have about I don't know, I'm going to call it a 3/8 to a half inch white spot on the bottom of each tail. Those feathers are very distinctive when they come off in the loft. They're a pretty feather to have that solid color and then that white spot at the end of them.
That's really interesting about the what did you call it? It was a moon mark on the tail.
Yeah, moon spot or they call it a moon spot or spot tail.
Okay, is the moon spot or spot tail, is that a rare occurrence that appears in this breed, or is that something that you can purposely recreate?
Oh yeah, it comes along pretty regularly in the ones that are there. The other breed that I have, the black lace, they have what they call a lace tail, and it's also very pretty. The tail on the lace tail is laced all the way down. And I don't know, maybe the last inch and a half or so on might be a solid white, something like that. They're not the moon spots like the others are. So the lacing that has attracted me that's on the wings continues down the back of the body clear to the almost the end of the tail. So there are those two types that are common in both the satinets and the blondinets. They come in both spot tail and lace tail varieties in pretty much all of the colors. I really think these are wonderful pigeons. I certainly have enjoyed raising them. I look forward to more and better shows. Our local group has been increasing. We've started out with 30 birds at a show and 40, and this last year we had 70 classic frills on exhibit at a couple of shows, and we're looking to exceed that this year with a group that's expanding and more breeders joining us all the time.
Would you say that this breed would be a good starter breed for someone who's getting into showing pigeons?
I really would. Where they are able to raise their own young, you don't have to have a feeder group or, keep a second set of birds in order to raise them. So not only the beauty, the mild-mannered temperament that they have, but the fact that they can raise their own young, all recommend them, I think, is a great bird for anyone who is starting out or would like to get into show pigeons. It's a terrific breed.
And if anybody's interested to learn more about this, you can check out their website, the classicoldfrill.org. There's a lot of information on that website for this breed and the club. And you can also shoot an email over to ncofcsecretary@gmail.com if you're interested in joining that national club. So, Ralph, I want to thank you so much. I really appreciate your time and insights on the classic frills.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for tuning in to another listener-requested episode of the All About Pigeons podcast. We truly appreciate your support. The soundtrack for the show comes from the pigeon musician Vital Mizraim. If you have a topic or a guest you'd like to hear more about in future episodes, or if you yourself would like to be a guest and just talk pigeons, please don't hesitate to reach out to us through email at allaboutpigeonspodcast@gmail.com or join our Facebook page, All About Pigeons Podcast, and connect with us there. Don't forget to leave a 5-star review wherever you listen. It supports the pigeon hobby and really helps the show. Remember, together the hobby thrives, support each other, and enjoy your pigeons.